Hello everyone. Today we will be learning hours on the clock. Remember how yesterday that we learned about an analog and digital clock? Yes, so today we will be learning hours on the clock. So our I can statement is, I can recognize the hours on an analog and digital clock. And our language arts I can statement is, I can answer questions from the text. So before we get started, let's read our book. Now, whenever I read this book to you today, I want you guys to think about, what times do I hear? And what time does he wake up and what time does he go to bed? Because at the end, I'll be asking you guys some questions. But before we get started, if you haven't watched the video of making your own clock, please do so, because we'll be using your clock that you made for today's lesson and the rest of the week. Okay, so let's get started. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 7 o'clock. Boing! It's time to get up. Mr. Wolf springs out of bed. What shall I wear today? He wonders, pulling up his clothes out of the wardrobe. I know. I'm going to be a superhero. Mr. Wolf puts on his bright red cape and sparkly super goggles. Don't forget what time he wakes up. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 8 o'clock. Mr. Wolf is hungry and his tummy is rumbling very loudly. Groggle. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 9 o'clock. A superhero's teeth are always sparkly and clean, says Mr. Wolf. Squeech! Oops, Mr. Wolf steps on the toothpaste tube. The toothpaste squirts everywhere. That is gonna be a big mess to clean up. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 10 o'clock. A superhero needs super fast bike. Thanks, Mr. Wolf, and off he goes. He waves to 3 little pigs. Hi, little pigs. See you this afternoon, he calls. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 11 o'clock. Mr. Wolf passes by Kitty's house. Poor Kitty is stuck in an apple tree. Help! Hold on, Kitty, I'll save you, shouts Mr. Wolf. A superhero always comes to the rescue. What's your favorite superhero? Mine's Batman. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 12 o'clock. All this superhero work is making me super hungry, says Mr. Wolf. I think it's time for a little snack. Mr. Wolf buys a snack, but it's not little at all. It's enormous. Look at this big sandwich. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 1 o'clock. After a rest, Mr. Wolf is feeling super again. I think I'll go for a swim, he says. Superheroes always need to keep fit. On the diving board, Mr. Wolf goes boing, 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 and dives in with a huge splash. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 2 o'clock. It's time for a game of football in the park. I'll use my super strength, shouts Mr. Wolf. He kicks the ball really, really hard and scores. Goal! What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 3 o'clock. Mr. Wolf visits the 3 little pigs. They are building a new house. Bing, clatter, bing. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 4 o'clock. When the house is finished, the pigs make Mr. Wolf a giant cup of hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. A good superhero always have a reward, says the littlest pig. Mr. Wolf loves hot chocolate. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 5 o'clock. It's dinner time, and the three little pigs have came round to Mr. Wolf's house for a delicious feast. Munch. It's hungry work being a superhero. Yum yum, says Mr. Wolf. Slurp. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? It's 6 o'clock. Mr. Wolf has had a wonderful day of being a superhero, and now he is feeling quite tired. He tucks himself into bed with a special bedtime story. A superhero always needs a good night's sleep, he says with a big yawn. Remember, think about the time he goes to bed. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? Zzz. Shh. Good night, Mr. Wolf. Okay, my friends. So, I want you to, just a second. Whoa. I want you to show me, using your clock that you made, which is an analog clock, I want you to show me the time he goes to bed or wakes up. I want you guys to show it. Gonna give you guys a couple seconds. And remember, the long hand is the minute hand, and the short hand is the hour hand, okay? Okay, hold it up. He wakes up at 7 o'clock. You can see that the long hand is at the 12 because it's the minute hand, and the hour hand, the short hand, is at the 7, which makes it 12 o'clock. So whenever the long hand is at the 12, it's going to be an hour, okay? Because it's going to be 60 whole seconds. Okay, next question. What time does he wake up? I'm sorry, we just did that. What time does he go to bed? I'm gonna give you guys a couple minutes. You guys got it? Hold it up. He goes to bed at 6 o'clock. The short hand is at the 6, which is the hour hand, and the long hand is at the 12, which is the minute hand, which makes it 6 o'clock. And do you notice whenever it's an hour, we say o'clock at the end? So 6 o'clock is when he goes to bed, and 7 o'clock is when he wakes up. Good job, guys. Now we're going to do it on an analog clock. Okay? So this is an analog clock. A digital clock. Hours. Okay? The hours go on this side and the minutes go on this side. So what time does he go, or what time does he wake up? You guys said 7 o'clock, right? And we know 7 is the hour and 0, 0, would be the minutes. 7 o'clock. O'clock also means, just think of whenever you say o'clock, it's going to be a 0 in the minutes, okay? Now, what time does he go to bed? You guys said 6 o'clock, right? So you notice that the 6 is in the hours and 0 is in the minutes because it's 6 o'clock. And when it's 6 o'clock, we add the 2 zeros in the minutes. Okay? Good job, guys. So now we are going to watch a YouTube channel. I'm going to pull it up on my iPad and show you through the video, okay? You will also be able to access this video after this if you want to rewatch it.
Hey there! Today, we will learn how to tell and write time. First, let's learn how to tell time using digital clocks. This is pretty easy since all we have to do is read through the numbers. For example, let's read the time on this clock.
Now we're going to read the time this time. Oops.
Notice that we have 2 zeros on the right side of the colon. This means 60 minutes or 1 hour has passed. However, we don't read it as 00. In telling time, we read this as o'clock. So this clock reads as 2 o'clock. Let's do more practice by matching the digital clock to the written time. Clock A is read as 3 o'clock. Clock B is read as 11
o'clock. So did you guys notice every time she said o'clock, it has the 2 zeros at the end. Now we're going to learn on an analog clock.
Analog clocks. Analog clocks have 2 hands. The hour hand is the short one, and the minute hand is the long one. A few things to remember. If the minute hand is pointed at 12, it represents 60 minutes or 1 hour and is read as o'clock. While if it's pointed at 6, it represents 30 minutes. And sometimes the hour hand will not point exactly at a number. In these cases,
we'll learn more about that tomorrow. So now we're going to look at analog clocks and figure out what time it is.
This analog clock. The hour hand is pointed at 4, and the minute hand is pointed at 12. So the time is 4 o'clock. How about this next clock?
Now we're going to match them
by choosing the correct digital clock that matches the analog clock. The hour hand is pointed at 6, and the minute hand is pointed at 12. So the time is 6 o'clock. This is the same as digital clock B. Next, the hour hand is pointed between.
last one.
And minute hands are pointed at 12. So the time is 12 o'clock. This is the same as digital clock D. Next, the hour hand.
Good job, guys.
You did great. I hope this helped you in learning how to tell and write time. See you next time.
Wow. So, do you remember how she said whenever the long hand, the minute hand at the 12, that's going to be an hour. So we're going to always say o'clock, no matter what. So if you need help looking at a clock and you see, oh, the long hand is at the 12, so it has to be an hour. So we know if it's on the 3, it's going to be 3 hours. Or if it's going to be at the 10, it's going to be 10 o'clock, 10 hours. Okay? Now, we're going to do worksheets, and this is all about, we're going to be reading. First of all, you guys should have received this in your packet of work that you guys picked up. It's this one right here. Okay? So, and you guys can always use the clocks that you made to help you. Okay? On whatever you want. Oh my. So, the first clock is at the long hand is at the 12 and the short hand is at the 3. Now our job is to write it on the digital clock. Now remember, the first part of the box is the hours and the second part of the box is the minutes. So I'm going to draw my analog clock. The hour, the minutes. Okay, so if we remember what she said, what time would this be? The long minute hand is at the 12, which is an hour, and the short hour hand is at the 3. What do you guys think it might be? I think it's 3 hours. So, we're going to write the 3 in the hour hand, right? Because that's how many hours there are. And remember, whenever it's an hour or o'clock, we add the 2 zeros at the end, right? Whoops. So, it's 3 o'clock. Now, let's do the next one. The hour hand. Oh, the hour and. So if both hands are facing at the 12, we know 12 also represents the hour, right? And the middle hand or the short hand is pointing at the 12. So I think it's 12 o'clock. So when we write 12 o'clock on the analog or on the digital clock, we're going to put 12 in the hour, right? Because that's how many hours we saw. And minutes, it's an o'clock and it's an hour. So we're going to add what at the end? 2 zeros. So it's going to be 12 o'clock. Now we are going to do the next one. I'm going to do the first top row for you, and then I want you guys to try the bottom row by yourself. Okay? The next one, the long hand is at the 12, and the short hand is at the 10. Just like this. What do you think? What time it is? That didn't make sense. What time do you think it is? The long hand's at the 12. And the short hand is at the 10. I think it's 10 o'clock. To write this on a digital clock, we're going to write 10 in the hour hand. And since it's an hour, it's 2 zeros at the end, which is 10 o'clock. Last one. The Longhand is at the 12. And the shorthand is at the 1. Ooh. What time do you think this is? We have the minute hand at the 12 and the hour hand pointing at the 1. I think it's 1 o'clock. So we're going to write the 1 in the hour hand because that's what the hour hand's facing. And when you know it's an hour, we're going to add the 2 zeros at the end, which is 1 o'clock. Now, I want you to complete the last 4 by yourself, and I will pick up this worksheet next week or at the end of the week to collect all your work, okay? Now, before we end, we are going to ask what we learned today. Think about what we learned today. What did we learn today? Well, we learned the hours on the clock, and we learned that if the minute hand's at the 12, it's going to be an hour, right? So we're going to add o'clock at the end of it, or if we're writing it on a digital clock, it's going to be a double 0, right? 2 zeros. And if the hour hand, the shorthand's facing at a number, that's going to be the hour hand, or the hour, right? So right now it's 4 o'clock. 400 is how we're going to write it on the digital clock. Good job, guys. So let's go over our I can statement. I can recognize hours on an analog and digital clock. Did we do that? I think we did. And I can answer questions from the text. I think we did that too because we were asking, what time did Mr. Wolf wake up, or what time did he fall asleep? So tomorrow we're going to be learning about half hours, okay? And if you haven't yet made your clock, please do so by tomorrow. Bye, guys.